Future of leadership is important because, man, we all work and that should be a pleasurable experience, right? And oftentimes, it's drudgery because maybe the culture isn't quite right. Maybe the communication channels aren't quite right.
Bret, thank you so much for joining the 3 Points podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Really, really good to be here and just good to have a bit of a chat, really.
We're going to have a great chat because you've got some really great insights you're going to share with us around the theme of the future of leadership, which I personally am incredibly intrigued by. It's audacious. We're going to get to that. But for now, I wanted to, introduce you properly and give you some space to introduce yourself. The reason that we're talking and how we've come to know each other is through the Neuro Leadership Institute. You do a lot of work with them and David Rock's organization. You and I have been chatting shop about it for a while, but actually the origin of our introduction comes from David and my team, who was a learner, a participant, somebody that was sitting in your sessions as you were helping sort of articulate, explain, and facilitate brain-based coaching. I would love to create some space for you to maybe share some of your background and introduce yourself to those that maybe don't know you.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So my background is quite varied, I would say. So I grew up in California. I live in the UK now. I've been here for about 20 years. As you mentioned, I do quite a lot of work with NLI. I'm a business psychologist by trade, but I specialize in applied neuroscience. What that means is that, psychology is all about kind of our behaviors and the sort of why we do the things we do. Neuroscience is all about those sort of electrical and chemical impulses happening in our brain. Where those things intersect is really interesting, and especially when you start to overlay that on the future of leadership. Right? Long path to get here. I've had, early, I was in the U.S. Navy when I first got out of school. I was in corporate life. I was a corporate salesperson for a long time. Had a live television career. I used to be a sports announcer and all kinds of things. This space is really where my heart has always been. And, they say that, find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm never at work because I absolutely love this space, love the interaction with people, love to just see how new concepts, new ideas, new thinking impacts the way people interact with the world. So I'm totally here for it.
I love that. What a great introduction, because one of the things that I have found myself sort of gravitating towards is it's around people who have this sort of diverse background of different experiences. And, when I think about the folks that we've met and brought into People Playbook, they tend to have some sort of scenic path to get to this leadership development work, and it's really fun. And for me, what's really exciting is hearing from you, because you've got that Navy experience, you've got the experience within the sports entertainment and being on television, and of course with the psychology and the business stuff that you're doing now. So I love it because I think for me it gives you tremendous credibility, but also breadth to be able to talk about the future of leadership through all of these varied experiences.
Yeah. And I think, we need that sort of color in our life, right? I often joke when I'm facilitating a program for senior leaders and I say, look, I'm the theorist. So here's, you're the ones at the coalface, but if we haven't spent time ourselves there, then we don't quite understand what the pressures are, because it's easy for me to be the theorist. We'll just do this and this and this, go on, off you go. But, without understanding what it's truly like and how, how much effort and thought and kind of planning it takes to kind of make that shift. If you're looking to make the shift, I think that's really key.
Well, look, Bret, let's kick off with a real grounding question before we introduce your 3 points. Why is the future of leadership important to you?
Yeah, so I suppose my kind of ethos, or my my why, in the Simon Sinek sense of why, really is for me personally to have a positive, lasting impact on the lives of everyone I meet. Future of leadership is important because, man, we all work, right? Everybody has to go to work, and that should be a pleasurable experience. It should be challenging, so it keeps us interested, engaged, but it shouldn't be drudgery. right? And oftentimes, it's drudgery because maybe the culture isn't quite right. Maybe the leadership focus isn't quite right. Maybe the communication channels aren't quite right. And so, if I can do my part to help improve that on a global stage, then fantastic. I'm helping to enrich the lives of others.
I love that positive, lasting impact and the importance of leadership within the context of work. I love I think Bruce Daisley and a few others. I remember Laszlo Bock, who ex Google head of people operations, and Bruce Daisley, whose work I love with his newsletter, which I find really insightful. Talk about make work better, and
Yeah.
the other I think thing that you and I connect on there is, I really think that the work that you and I are doing, Brad, is about happy, healthy, and productive teams. And I think all three can coexist. Got 3 points we're going to cover around the future of leadership. Your first one, and you've touched upon it already, and it's near and dear to my heart, is connection on a human level first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. Human connection is so important. Human connection is the thing that we all crave more than anything else, right? Um, that social interaction, right? I mean, we are social creatures, and to connect on that level helps us to be motivated differently. To connect on that level helps us to align, right? To connect on that level helps us to, if you're in a leadership position, really helps to empower your people. And without that connection, man, it's no wonder we get anything done. And oftentimes we don't focus on that. We just get to work and, Tony, here's your list of things, go do it and do it exactly this way and report when you're done. And, where's the connection? Where's that human interaction that you and I would have if we're, out on a bike ride? Hey, Tony, how's it going today? Right. That's the thing that is so important. And without it, we just shut the other person's brain down.
It is, and it's so interesting. And obviously, you mentioned you're from California. I mean, my own experience of the connection piece, oftentimes within the context of, meeting clients or getting into any sort of business, we talked about through the serious leadership hat off, is
Mm.
it's straight into content. It's straight
Yeah.
into let's do this, let's do that. And for me, I find it incredibly unsettling, unnerving. And ultimately, and this for me, and I want you to talk more about this, Bret, is it's unproductive. It's not a good way to do business and get things done. Is that fair to say, or what would be your take
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, because without that sort of human connection, um, we're not sort of allowing people to show up with what I say their best brains at work, right? Connection is so important to everything we do. In fact, Matt Lieberman talks about this in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Hmm.
He says, we talk about, we look at Maslow and we look at food, shelter, but he says, when we come out of the womb, the first thing we need is for somebody to take care of us. When we come out of the first thing we need is connection. And then all that other stuff comes afterwards. It's the same, in any relationship, but if we're talking in the context of leadership, if we don't have that connection, then I'm causing you to turn up to work, to any kind of engagement, to any kind of exchange with me in that sort of fight or flight mode in your brain. And you're looking, what's going on here? Oh, Brett's put a meeting in my diary. Oh, that's not going to be very good. Right. And if that's the way that my team is showing up for me, then how can I expect them to perform at their very best? And how can I expect them to really kind of excel and be open to new skills, be open to new learnings, be open to, new direction in everything that they do. So the connection is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And oftentimes, um, when you're working with folks, either clients or in the room, either online in person, uh, there is that craving, and people are sort of dancing around. Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, and actually, it comes down to actually that is the antidote to a lot of the problems and challenges.
I have to just kind of call out something that I've seen you do, if that's okay.
Okay,
So we had a
only if it's a good thing, Bret.
yeah. Now Tony's off now. Um, yeah. So a couple weeks ago we met for the first time, right? And we with David and we talked about you know potential playmaker activities and what we could do together and a couple other email conversations. Decided, yep, we're going to work together. Great. A couple of days later, and I think it might have been on a Friday or it was Thursday, one of the days at the very end of the day, and you just sent me a voice note. Hey, Brett, just wanted to say I'm really excited that you're here. Can't wait to work with you. You have no idea the difference that made in my engagement with this organization. And then a couple of days later, there was a Slack video of you introducing me to the rest of the team. Right? That made me really want to engage, made me feel seen and heard as part of a new team. Organizations don't do that. So, just I really appreciated that effort on your part because it really made me feel welcome. Companies don't do that. You do that really well.
Oh, thanks very much, Brett. Geez, that's lovely feedback, and I'm glad it resonated. I'm not surprised from the little I know of you that it mattered. And it's funny. I want to get into the reasons companies don't do that because it's kind of our mission, what we're trying to do with our work. And I know that's why we're working together because this is so critical to you. And you've already talked about that when you get into the work that you do around facilitating insight for leaders. You're focused on the connection. Yes, we are dancing into point number 2. So let's get in there. Your second point, Brett, is around conversations that drive others to insight.
Yeah. So, not just learning, but behavior change happens when the penny drops for you. Right. And so I can give you all the theory, I can give you all the solutions, I can give you all the instruction in the world. But if it doesn't make sense to you, if it doesn't fit into sort of your thought process, and if you don't have those realizations on your own, it's not going to stick. Right. And so, we think about how we drive insight in conversations, and our brains are kind of particular. We need certain conditions for us to have insights. Part of the reason that connection is so important because it puts our brains in what we call that toward state. It primes me to listen to those, sort of quiet, disconnected signals from my non-conscious mind saying, "Hey, Brett, what about this?" Right? And so when we have those kind of conversations, it's helping to develop the critical thinking of our teams, right? Rather than building a dependency of my team on me. Right. So let's say, I wake up in the morning and I'm going to get dressed and my wife's in bed. She looks over and she says, "Hey, Brett, you're getting fat. You need to go to the gym." Well, I may or may not go to the gym, right? That's her thinking. That's nothing to do with me. On the other hand, if I'm getting dressed and I pull my favorite trousers out of the cupboard and I go to put them on and they're a bit tight and I think, "Oh gosh, I love these trousers. I must have gained a few pounds. Maybe I should go to the gym." Probably going to act on that, right? Because when I have an insight, that insight is always going to translate to ownership, and ownership 9 times out of 10 is going to result in action. As leaders, we tend to do it the other way around. Hey, go do this, go do that.
How would you go about, helping, leaders or individuals, anyone that wants to sort of enact change or drive progress? What would be your encouragement to them?
Yes, I think it's a very different perspective on our focus. You've got a bunch of points that they're trying to accomplish. They're not necessarily moving at the speed that they want, and so are they thinking, "Gosh, what's keeping us from moving at that speed?" Which most people would tend to do, or are they thinking, "What can we do differently to speed up this process?" Which is just a slightly different mindset shift. But if I'm looking at what would it take to do X, Y, and Z rather than why aren't I doing X, Y, and Z? Again, it's going to have an impact on my brain. And the more solutions focused I can be, the more future focused I can be, the more likely my brain is going to be to put an action plan in place. Right? When I'm doing, if I'm evaluating somebody or I'm doing a review of somebody. Right. I always use the same sort of pattern, and I'll ask them in that last activity, "What do you think went really well there?" Let them think about it. Let them think about the maybe the progress they've made over what they did last time. Maybe think about what they're really proud of themselves for. And then the next question I'll ask them is, "If we're going to do that again, what would you do differently?" That's a learning question, right? That's the thing that first they have to create a vision of what it looks like if they do it differently, and then they can describe that vision to me. That's nothing to do with me saying, "Hey, Tony, I think you should do this or that." Say, "Hey, Tony, what might make that more effective?"
Yeah. And that that for me, Brett, is the difference in, I think, how you and I approach our craft versus what I
Mm,
see in with other folks, where we're focused on, and I know you are focused on the facilitating insight, the conversation that drive others to insight versus the instructing. Brett, I we could spend all day just on this particular point, right? But are there any other sort of final, or what other final sort of tidbits could you share with us that can help, again, whether someone is in a leadership position or just generally, how can we better facilitate and drive conversations into insight?
yeah, so I think these two things are really closely related. So we talked about human connection is necessary to get people in the space to be able to have insights, and then the types of questions and conversations we have. Um, are we, it's kind of has become cliche. I want to set you up for success here, but do we know what that means? What that means is, am I giving you the ability to focus on the art of the possible, right? Or am I focusing you on the obstacles, right? What's the image in your head that I want you to create based on my question? Is it an image of this thing when it's solved, or is it an image of all the reasons why not?
Mm.
And I mean, that's kind of the heart of it. If we filter everything we say, do, ask, work through that lens, we're going to create a team that's much more higher performing, much more uh, vision and solution orientated, and much more advanced in their own critical thinking abilities.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, putting that image in people's head, getting them thinking
Mm.
about what's possible. Okay, look, I'm bought into it. I love that you've also helped us sort of stay on track around re-emphasizing the importance of connection first, creating that environment. Second point, leading into these conversations that drive others to insight. So let's pivot now into our third point, Brett, for the future leadership, which is around choice,
Mm.
proactively influencing culture and truly owning your leadership impact.
Yeah. So uh, when we think about what we do as leaders, right? Leaders, we cast a long shadow as leaders. People are watching us whether we want them to or not. Culture is going to develop around us, whether we're involved in that development or not. So as leaders, we have to make a conscious choice. I want to craft, I want to create a type of culture for my organization. That culture needs to be psychologically safe. That culture needs to be a culture of experimentation where people aren't afraid of failure, but they're willing to kind of learn from the mistakes that they have. And I think sort of traditional leadership is, well, I would say has become, but maybe always has been very transactional.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to do this because I need this to get back to my agenda, right? We need to be more interactional. And what I mean by that is, as a leader, um, I don't just want to own my behavior. I want to own the impact I have on the organization, right? Because it's easy to say, well, yeah, sometimes I'm a jerk, but that's just the way I am. So I'm owning my behavior, so that's okay, right? No, just because you say you own it doesn't give you, my friend Steve Shadlinski says, it doesn't give you a jerk hall pass, right? So no, you don't get a jerk hall pass. You your behavior is what your behavior is. What you need to own is the impact you have on those around you, because that's going to change your behavior. If that
Mm.
makes sense. So you got to make
Yeah,
a choice to own that stuff, right?
yeah. And the bit that came up to me there as you were explaining that, Brett, was kind of, I mean, definitely culture. Goodness sake, we could
Yeah,
spend forever. And how many people are also peddling that message of, well, we can just quickly fix your culture. Oh goodness, that's, yeah,
yeah,
good luck to you. But I love the fact that you're saying, it's a move from transactional to interactional. I I was thinking about the, I hope I get this phrase right now, the uh, ends justifies the means type thing of
yeah,
like, oh, well, we need to get there. So I'll just run through people, burn them out, sort of command and control in my style and shout at people and penalize them when they don't get done what I've asked them to do at a transactional level. And um, that's okay. That's going to create a high performance culture. And I
yeah.
think about actually, the opposite for me has been true in my life professionally, personally.
Mm,
And certainly as I do more of this work, I notice those leaders that are truly effective are creating the environment. And I'm using military terms because I learned it before around commander's intent.
Yeah.
This is what success will look like. Let me support you in understanding that vision, and help remove obstacles and create the environment for you to be effective. I think the phrase you used earlier, which I'm definitely gonna be using from now on, was bring your best brain. And I think that is heavily connected to culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. David Marquette does a lot of work in this area. I don't know if you're familiar with David Marquette. So he was a U.S. Navy submarine commander. His you can look him up on YouTube. He's brilliant. But he did exactly that. So he was submarine commander. He came into this sub. It was one of the worst performing subs in the whole of the Navy. And he, with his intent, he decided what he was going to do is, instead of giving orders, he was going to let his team tell him what they were going to do. The only order that he kept was the order to fire a missile, because that was going to end in loss of life. But any other, they would come up to him, and instead of saying, what should we do, they would come up and they would say, well, I intend to submerge the ship. And he would say, well, what do you think I'm thinking right now? Well, you're thinking about this safety, this safety, this safety. Okay, so have you covered all those bases? Yeah. Okay, go do it. Right. And he completely turned that ship around in less than 2 years to being the highest performing sub that the Navy has ever had. But it was because he changed intent. He was letting people learn to think. He was letting people decide whether they needed to go to the gym or not on their own.
Yeah. All right.
Revolution.
So let's say we're not driving submarines or
Yeah.
sailing submarines. I don't. Is it sailing or driving?
Yeah. Swimming up.
Steering, swimming.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
what can the rest of us do, Bret, in this space of your third point, right? Proactively influencing culture. You've talked a little bit about the shift from transactional to interactional. What tactically, practically can we do?
Yeah. So again, really linked to the other 2 points, right? So we've set the right brain state, so to speak. We've allowed our teams to start to make new connections for themselves through exploration, through experimentation. And then what we're doing, where we're owning our impact, is we're really focusing on the learning of our team. So how do you think that's going to impact this thing we're doing? Oh gosh, all of a sudden we're working with this client, and the deadlines have all shrunk, and I'm Tony's on holiday and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to ask him. I don't know. Okay. So what do you think would best help us move this project forward given where we are now? Wow. It's a different kind of question, really, rather than, well, yeah, Tony's on holiday, so I don't know what else is in the way, right? Instead, we're helping our teams. We're helping those that we are. I don't want to say in charge of, but those that we have responsibility to develop. Because after all, the leader's primary responsibility is to develop those around them. That's it, right? My responsibility. I always say, they say it rolls downhill, right? It rolls downhill until it gets to a strong leader that says, it's not going to roll on my team. I'm going to be the buffer. And hey, team, this is what's going on. This is the challenge we're facing. Let's brainstorm together and see if we can't come up with some new ideas, some new thoughts. Right? I mean, you look at, all the significant companies in the world are always looking at new thoughts. The focus is on learning, right? The focus is on team development, and most of that, if not all of it, comes down to the leadership of those organizations owning their impact on the rest of the organization.
I love that. I love that message around the leader's responsibilities to develop those around them. I mean, that obviously obviously resonates. It'd be weird if it didn't. And I like the analogy of me being on holiday. First of all, I really like that idea, and I also love that sort of optimal state for me, right, and for those that are responsible for others, that others have the understanding, the context, and the confidence to make decisions, in the right hierarchy, and to put themselves in a position to best understand the culture of what a group of people are trying to achieve, right? Bret, you've been so generous with your time. I know you're full on with a bunch of different projects right now and doing a lot of these 3 points that we're talking about. We've covered a lot. We've talked about, your first point around future of leadership, connection on a human level, first and foremost, right? Focus on that before you get into content. You then secondly shared your point around conversations that drive others to insight. Hilarious analogy of your wife telling you to go to the gym versus you not being able to fit into your pants or trousers. And then thirdly, which has really resonated with me, is this moving away from the transactional, right? And actually proactively influencing culture and owning your impact as a leader. So
Yeah.
if we all, right, regardless of our position, our geography, our location, whether we're on a submarine or we're working at home remotely or whatever your context, how might the world change if we were to implement these 3 points?
Yeah, can you imagine if we had freedom to make those decisions? If instead of, I think about all of the things that are going on in the world right now, everything that's in the news, the political situations across the world, right? The things that we hear going on in organizations, and are we working from home? Are we mandated to work in the office? Oh, hang on a second. In the UK, they're going to make a law about that. All of those things um, tend to kind of push people in a direction. What if we didn't have those things that were pushing us in a direction, but we were all aligned on our direction, and we could support each other to get where we need to get. Huge difference, because we then can bring our best brain into the activity, because my brain is not shut down because I'm worried, oh yeah, Tony, he's a bit difficult to work with, or he's got big high demands, or he's always looking at me, he's always kind of surveilling what I'm doing, and that puts me on edge. And when I'm on edge, I can't do my best thinking. My brain doesn't work that way.
Oh, absolutely. Bret, yeah. How can being on edge bring the best out of you? I've never understood that. And let's continue that quest together. And for all of us in that space, and for everyone who's been listening, I think, yeah, it's a call to action, right? Let's
Mm.
create the environment where the best brain can be there, and happy, healthy, productive teams. Let's go for it. Bret, I'm so delighted that you've spent the time here today with us. Thank you so much for joining the 3 Points podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, Tony. It's been a real joy just to get to have a conversation. Like I said, we can do this for hours and hours and hours. Yeah, I'm in my element. I love to talk about leadership, talk about what's going on in our brains, talk about how we marry those two things together. So yeah, anytime.